xmpp and Matrix are both terrible, and in this video I kind of want to talk about why I think that is. So xmpp and Matrix are both, if you don't know, messaging protocols, so instant messaging. And xmpp is pretty old, I think at this point, like over 20 something years, and Matrix is pretty, well, young compared to that. So xmpp kind of evolved organically, I would say. So it kind of started as like what was it called, Java, and then it kind of turned into xmpp, which stands for Extensible Messaging and Presence Protocol. And Matrix is kind of compared to that, it's kind of a top-down thing. So there's a organization, I think, what's it called, the Matrix, not institute, but something else. And they kind of manage the protocol, and it's a very big project, and it kind of tries to do everything. And kind of xmpp is also kind of the same, but again, it's organically grown, so there's not really a main centralized organization behind it. But anyways, they are both terrible because they are very bloated, both of them, because again, they try to do everything. And I have kind of put these words both here, so bloat and complexity, because they kind of go hand in hand. Because the more you try to do, the more complex your stuff is gonna get, and the more kind of bloated it is gonna get. So this kind of, I think, goes hand in hand in a sort of sense intuitively. And again, the problem is really the problem statement. If we want to kind of zoom out from this kind of narrow view of just seeing, well, they're both instant messaging protocols and stuff like that. But again, they try to do everything. They also try to have clients on every platform. I think this is like one of the most difficult things nowadays, to have like good clients on all platforms. So Matrix tries to kind of solve this by just using a mainstream framework. I think they use some, at least last time I checked, they used some terrible JavaScript thing. Like, I don't know if it was Electron or it was like something else, but it's like huge and bloated. Like, yeah, I mean, it runs everywhere. It runs on your browser, it runs on your desktop, it runs on your phone and stuff like that. Also on Android and on iPhone or whatever. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a huge bloated Electron-like JavaScript framework. Like, yeah, but again, the complexity kind of determines that you kind of need to use this, because if you want to write native clients for all platforms, yeah, no, probably not gonna happen, unless you're like some mega dystop corp, which the Matrix guys are not. I mean, they are kind of a non-profit, I think. And for xmpp, the situation is just kind of, well, they are not really. There are a few good clients. I mean, Conversations is really good, and also like what's it called, Gajim, I guess is how you pronounce it. And yeah, that's kind of already it. I mean, I've tried Prosody. I even made a video on Prosody in the past, and I've tried it again. So recently again, I've tried it a few years back, and it kind of does work, but yeah, I don't know. xmpp is just a very messy protocol, I feel like. And with Matrix, I feel like you can at least interact with it, because you have like this kind of I think it's all based on HTTP. So you have like HTTP calls for everything. But with xmpp, you have like an XML stream, which is, yeah, kind of, I never found a way to really interact with it or to also program with it. So yeah, that has always been kind of pain for me. And again, let me say, xmpp with Conversations, I've had really good experiences with. So if you just want to communicate with someone over your phone, Conversations with xmpp is very good. Like, it's not gonna get in your way. Once you have set it up, it works very well, if I can speak. Like, I've not really had problems. It's very smooth and all that. But if you try to dig a bit deeper or try to do multi-devices, and you have like a client on your desktop and one phone, and then your friend also has like a Prosody or whatever set up. Not Prosody, Profanity is what I wanted to say. It's not a terminal xmpp client, not the server. That is Prosody. It's gonna get very messy, and it's kind of gonna, I don't know, at least for me, it all kind of broke apart with like synchronization and all this kind of stuff. And you can tell me, well, yeah, you just set it up incorrectly and stuff like that. Maybe, yeah. But I think that's already kind of the problem. Like, yeah. And with Matrix, you don't really have these pitfalls because you have like one client that's on all platforms. It's this terrible JavaScript monstrosity. And on the server side, you also don't have that many servers to choose from. Really, I think the only one that's feature complete is Synapse, which is like written in Python, if I'm not mistaken. But I've tried to set it up like recently, like some month or a year maybe ago, and I really couldn't really get it to work because it was terrible. Because, all right, you set up the server, everything's fine, you set up the database, or your Docker image does that for you or whatever. But then you need this extra thing for like history, for like messaging history. And you also need to set up domains for that extra thing, and then you need to like do 7 other things, and it's like, okay, no, I'm not gonna, like, no, sorry. But again, I think the problem here is complexity. So if you have this idea, well, we need to have super efficient messaging history, and then we need this extra thing, yeah, it's gonna get very complex really quickly. But I think the more important question for all of this is why even instant messaging at all? Like, why is that important? Because I think this point of complexity very much relates to instant messaging. So you kind of want to have like your messages instant, well, yeah, and you want to have them synchronized over different devices, and you also want to be able to have like inline, so in the client, inline images, and you want to have this and that, and so your clients need to be bloated because they need a lot of features, but your servers also need to be bloated because they also need a lot of features. You want to have like instant messaging history, and you want to be able to retrieve that from the server and all this kind of stuff. So, and if you start to dig into this stuff, also, if we think about XMPP, or well, Matrix also has that, but with XMPP it's kind of in the name, like instant messaging and presence protocol. So you also want to have like presence indicators. Is this person live? And all this kind of stuff. So once you start to dig in, you very quickly realize that it's very complex, all this stuff. And the question is, for what? Like, why is that important? Also with like presence indicators, like why is that important at all? And I think this is the right question to ask. Because I think most of these things aren't important at all, and I think they may even stand in the way of like quality communication, if in the context of computer communication, that is. So again, why instant messaging? Why is that important? Why is it important to have like a one chat window with all the history in it? Like these things are the things we never think about when you think of instant messaging. It's clear that that's how it is. You have like your chats in a list, and then you click on one of them, and then the window pops open with the chat, and yeah, because that is kind of the most technical, most straightforward way to think about it. But again, it's kind of difficult with all the bells and whistles to implement it. And also, let me say that before I move on, I also think no other messaging, like client server protocol thing has solved this at all. Like Briar doesn't solve it because it's only available on Android. Simplex also, in my opinion, doesn't solve it because its mobile app has like some terrible battery issue where it just drains your battery, and also it doesn't have real cross-device synchronization. It does a lot of other things correctly, sure, but there are these huge, big, in-your-face problems which just make it unusable on day-to-day basis. Also, again, it's like a huge, complex thing, especially with like their no ID kind of technique. So they don't have IDs. So session also, this is kind of, again, terrible bloated client stuff, and also this kind of whole, what is called low-key networking thing also makes it very difficult or very complex. And then you have all the centralized stuff like Signal, and also the whole proprietary group like Telegram, WhatsApp. I don't think we need to talk about these, right? It's kind of obvious that they are not even in the race when it comes to private, secure, and freedom respecting instant messaging. So again, I don't think there's really any software that gets it right, like completely right. And that is, again, because I think the problem statement is too complex. So yeah, moving on. Email is also terrible, but I think email is still the best, like, period. But okay, let's look at why email is terrible. Email is terrible because there is too much stuff, again, that needs to be set up for email to work correctly nowadays. Commercial email providers have implemented or have added all these layers on top of just normal regular email because of security reasons that make it very difficult to get all the moving parts correct. And if you don't get all the moving parts correct, your email server is going to get blocked by these big email providers, which really sucks, let me tell you. So this is kind of the reason email is terrible, not because of the protocol itself or because the software or whatever, or the software implementation, server or client side, but really because of this kind of, I mean, to use the word industrialization in this context is kind of funny, but it kind of does apply. So you have these, because email is a globally used protocol, and you have these big corporations, they kind of, with time, all this extra security layer stuff has kind of built up on top of just normal regular email, if that makes sense. But again, I think email is the best because it has the widest range of server and client software, because it's the most flexible, and also because I think this is what I kind of want to add to what I said earlier about like this kind of intuitive view we have of like messaging, that where we have like one window and one chat, and there's like one message after another, and it's all in sequential order and stuff like that. I think email is better in that way, because instead of thinking about a kind of conversation in like this linear fashion, not to say that linear fashion is bad, but not in this, well, there's a message and then this message and then this message. It's rather that we're thinking, with email, we're thinking about, well, actual like separate emails, and each of them is kind of one, well, mail. And I think that's better to think about that as like one single unit than just one chat. I hope that makes sense. So I found, at least for me personally, I found that to be better, because you think more about, yeah, it's just the messages are more complete, is what I want to say, I think. So it's not this kind of, oh yeah, I'm just gonna write like 2 words and then this and then this. It's not that fragmented. It's like, okay, I'm gonna sit down, write this email out, I'm gonna respond to or write out my points or whatever, and then I'm gonna send it and it's done. And it's not this permanent kind of constant noise, I would say, as with instant messaging. Because with instant messaging, through this kind of phenomenon of having this one window where all these messages with this other person are listed out, we kind of always think about the context, the implicit context. And with email, that's not really the case. With email, if there is implicit, or if there is context that is not in the message itself, you normally reference it. You normally say, well, in this other message you have sent this and that. At least that's how I do it. But so yeah, emails are more self-contained, while instant messaging messages are more context dependent and more fragmented, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's I think all I wanted to talk about. I hope I haven't missed anything too important, but I don't think so. So again, to conclude, xmpp and Matrix are both terrible, and every other instant messaging service software, client server software, is also terrible, because the problem statement is, I think, too complex. And also it's unnecessarily complex, because to just relay messages, we have like email and more simpler protocols like it. Or, well, not that there are any simpler protocols like email, but it would be easy to build something like email, much more so than something like a full-featured instant messaging solution. So yeah, I think, yeah, that's it. Oh, let me also add to this. It of course also depends on kind of what people need to use a certain solution. Like obviously it does. So, but I think with email it's easier for the normal person to wrap their head around it because it relates to, well, normal mail. And yeah, so it's the electronic equivalent or the digital equivalent to something real, while instant messaging is not the equivalent to anything real, if that makes sense. So yeah, nowadays I just try to stick to email, or I do stick to email and not use anything else. So I don't use xmpp anymore. I also, well, I haven't used Matrix in a long time, but I also try to completely avoid all other instant messaging services. So yeah, and for all other things, I like, if I need to communicate over distance, and if it's not something that like requires a full-fledged email, I just call like over my phone, you know? So yeah, that's it. Have a nice day.